Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to begin with a joke. Do you guys know the joke of the police officer and the rabbi that walk into a bar? You don't. And the reason is because there isn't one. I don't think there's any police officer and rabbi jokes that there's one that I know, but it's not for tonight. But otherwise, I don't think there's any jokes about rabbis and officers. It's rabbis and priests, and officers and criminals maybe. But you don't normally find rabbis and police chiefs and police officers in the same joke, because they usually are like associated in different realities and different worlds. But tonight we're going to merge them, because in reality they do work together. And we're going to cross the police line, the virtual police line behind me, where people think they're afraid of the police and they're afraid, they see a police car. Some people, unfortunately, see a police car and they're ready to get afraid, and their blood starts to, their heart starts to go fast. So tonight we're going to have an opportunity to hear from, first and foremost, our police chief Clyde Parry, who has truly been a friend of the Jewish community. He's been with the Coral Springs Police Department for 31 years, starting all the way at the bottom as a patrol officer and working his way up to deputy chief, and then eventually becoming our police chief. He was the Officer of the Year in 2002, Supervisor of the Year in 2007. He received many awards: Outstanding Law Enforcement Officer Award from the United States Attorney's Office, Exceptional Police Initiative Commendation, many other, whole list of citations and awards that he's received. And I'm sure he deserves each and every one of them. We've done an amazing job leading the Coral Springs Police Department. And in addition to hearing from our police chief, we're going to also hear from a dear and very beloved member of the community, Rabbi Friedman, who many rabbis are working hard, taking care of their community and their paid membership, and those that are members of their community. And Rabbi Friedman, like many Chabad rabbis, is committed to the entire city, to the entire community. And so one of the things that Rabbi Friedman does, besides for taking care of his synagogue and his membership and all that, he's a volunteer chaplain for the police force. And so it's actually an honor to have you both together tonight. And we're going to get to hear two different perspectives of the same issues, both from the police side as well as from the community chaplain, to be able to give a chance for the community to hear from our police about some of the very important issues that are facing our community today that many people are very, very worried about. So, and
Rabbi,
yes.
Rabbi Denberg, I just want to make one, not correction, because what you said is 100% correct, but I do want to make one observation, that even though all these things you said about the police chief is true and then some, but I also want to give a little bit of a shout out to the officers who start at the bottom, that while they maybe perhaps start on the bottom, they're not at the bottom, because it is those police officers that are on the streets that we owe the biggest thank you to. So it reminds me, and since we're amongst friends over here, Rabbi Denberg, so we could be less formal, but it reminds me, and you're welcome to elaborate on the famous lesson that the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, would learn from the pawn of the chess set, that even though it's a pawn, for those of us who know chess, the pawn, by perseverance and being dedicated, has the potential of being the queen in chess. And the truth is that it is the policeman that's out there in the street, and probably Chief Parry will say that more, knows that and appreciates that more than any of us.
You're 100% correct. When I said that, I was thinking right afterwards that no one's on the bottom.
It's not a critique. Because
no, you're right.
Correct, by the way.
And I wanted to say that in addition to us being able to hear from the police and from yourself as a chaplain, but it's an opportunity for us to publicly say thank you to the police department, who have truly been there for us always. For the entire city, done an amazing job, especially the Jewish community, that many times the alerts go up and there's anti-Semitic incidents that happen and shootings and things that have happened that have caused concern in the Jewish community. And so we're very blessed to, I think, have an amazing, very engaged and very involved police force. Okay, I'm going to go straight to some questions. And obviously, anyone that's watching tonight, feel free to comment in the comments on Facebook or send me a message. And if we can sneak it in and we have time, we'd be glad to address all the questions that come up. let's start. Obviously, we're living in very difficult times, and people are out of work, unfortunately, and people are very nervous with Corona, and people don't know what's happening. So how has the police force, Chief, I'm going to start with you. How has the police force adapted to coronavirus with wearing masks, with kids out of school, many different issues that are going on?
Well, obviously there's a lot of issues and there's a lot of hurdles to get over. Wearing a mask all the time is something I think all of us had to get used to, and I think that it's something that it gets more and more difficult. We've issued PPE, different masks, N95 masks to our officers. The guys and gals that are out in the field that are coming in contact with people, we've asked them to wear N95 masks, to protect themselves and to protect the citizens. Inside our building, we've taken a lot of precautions. Obviously we want to try and keep as many people as we can from getting sick. This is a highly contagious, rapidly evolving disease, and the infections have been going around. We've had some members that have been sick. Luckily they've all recovered so far. We have some that are currently sick right now. So, we've had to adapt how we do business a little bit. Just recently, when the numbers spiked again, we closed our lobby for the first time. I have to tell you that closing our lobby bothers me. Our building is the public building. Anybody should be able to come in to the police department and talk to us. And we've had to make precautions and close the lobby and have a phone outside where somebody can call and then we meet them. So we've made those tweaks. Obviously, when officers are out, look, we're in South Florida. It's extremely hot. It's hot all over the United States. It's summertime. And, if you're out and you're, doing your job and you have to wear a mask and it's constricting the amount of oxygen you're getting, that's been difficult as well. But by and large, I think we've done a good job. I think most people have bought into it. I know all our officers have. If I could knock on wood, I would. Most of our officers have stayed safe, despite, coming in contact with people that have tested positive for COVID-19. We've been able to keep our dispatch center, which, if there's two cities in Broward County that run their own dispatch center, us and Plantation. And, the Broward Sheriff's Office, had COVID-19 sweep through their dispatch center. Unfortunately, a young lady lost her life, tragically, to the disease. And, we have been lucky so far in trying to keep it, tamped down, but we've taken those precautions. And I think if everybody would do those three things that they talk about, social distancing, wearing a mask, washing your hands thoroughly and constantly, it helps keep things pretty calm and helps keep things as normal as it can be. What's been tough for us is that there's been, despite everything that's going on in the world and before the George Floyd incident, we had a lot of citizens, a lot of community members, you guys included, that have brought stuff to the police department and showing appreciation for our department, and that makes it difficult too, because we have to make sure that things that are brought in are brought in a safe manner, that they're individually wrapped, that we're not gathering in large areas like we did. I will tell you that I, much like everybody in the world, I'm sure, long for those days when, we can all get together and shake a hand, hug somebody and
Absolutely.
share a meal.
Yes. Let me just ask you quickly, has anyone in the police force gotten coronavirus? Or you
Yes.
spared?
Yes, we have. In fact, I was just talking to one of the guys that just got cleared tonight. I think we've had somewhere between 8 and 10 members, who have come down with it. But like I said, luckily they've been sick, but most people have been mildly sick, and so far everybody's made a full recovery.
That's great. Thank God for that. Thank God for that. Okay, Rabbi Friedman, tell us about, from your perspective, dealing with the difficulties of coronavirus. How has the Chabad adapted? And then we're just talking about the food distribution and the police helping before we went live. Tell us about that for a minute, please.
So, I also, if I could have a moment to, as you began, to express appreciation for the exceptional work that the police department has done over all these years here in the community, especially during this challenging time. And there's countless examples. Maybe we'll have time to get to that. I will say that in part, as becoming a chaplain, and then I'll get to your question, Rabbi Denberg, but as part of becoming a chaplain, I went through, one of the requirements was to take the Citizens Academy. And growing up in Brooklyn, New York City is a big city, and we were raised by our parents, by community members, that there should always be a respect for the police department, and we had a deep respect for the police on the street and so on. At the same time, it was like a whole different world. The police were there, but it wasn't. We did our thing. Everybody in New York City, everybody does their own thing. So when I took the Citizens Academy at the police department, it was an eye-opener to what the police do. And, we got in and we did some of the simulations. And within seconds, you have seconds to decide, which is life and death, that a police officer has to decide, what course of action to take, which was an amazing experience, but even more so, going through all the different courses and then seeing the different personnel and the different units of the police department was an amazing eye-opener, and a very positive eye-opener, in the sense that there was.
We lost you. Just when you muted yourself.
I didn't mute myself. Somebody tried calling in.
Oh.
For a moment. So just going through that Citizens Academy, there was just such positive energy. The people that presented, the atmosphere that was there was just fantastic. So that's just a general introduction, and for that we're much more appreciative than before we got involved on that level. In terms of responding here to the COVID, like all houses of worship, and as Rabbi Denberg, as well, there is the challenge of being safe on the one hand, which is the first and primary responsibility, and at the same time trying to be there for the community in terms of offering services, and that people who want to come and pray and at the same time want to have some normalcy in their life. So you want to try to have that balance. And then, even starting from March, the first thing that came to that was kind of obvious is that a lot of people were hurting. A lot of people were hurting just simply by just struggling to put food on the table. And it is our responsibility and our merit to make sure that doesn't occur. And regardless of your background, regardless if you're what race and what ethnic background, it is one of the primary responsibilities of a human being is to make sure that another human being doesn't go hungry. So together with a wonderful group of volunteers and the city and the police department and various channels, we were able to establish a line of continuous food in abundance, thousands and thousands of boxes per week of various foods, whether it's simply fresh, which is a fantastic box, or just mixed vegetables or fruit or milk or fish, at different times, different distributions. And that's been an amazing sort of, I would say, merit to be able to be that conduit. And I want to stress, together with many, many amazing volunteers of all ages and all groups. So that's that.
Yes. By the way, there's a beautiful picture that I shared on Facebook a few weeks ago of one of the police officers when you first started the weekly distribution, putting boxes in his trunk to go and deliver to somebody that needed help with the deliveries.
Well, so, I do know, Rabbi Denberg, that without saying too much, because just to preserve the dignity of families, But the city has been very helpful in coming to here at Chabad Coral Springs, to coming and picking up food and bringing it to families in need that they know. We don't even know who they are. It's all done in a discretionary way. So again, to preserve the dignity of the families, the city of Coral Springs has come here. The city of Coconut Creek pulled up with a couple of vehicles, with a couple of pickup trucks yesterday. The city of Margate was here, as well as many other houses of worship, and you know, either shelters or so on that have. We have a woman who deals specifically with sort of abused children, and she came and took boxes and boxes to distribute to those families. She said yesterday, I don't know if you saw, you might have seen on Facebook, it was so heartwarming. She posted, she said, some of these kids haven't had a peach, because one of the boxes had like cut up peaches, haven't had a peach in I don't know, in months, or she wrote over there exactly the length of time. They were so appreciative just to be able to sink their teeth into a peach.
Wow. Chief, so we were talking before, I'm going to go off for seconds following up on this, about the children that are, you know, that unfortunately underprivileged. And are you seeing a rise in children on the streets and homelessness, in people that have nothing?
You know, I luckily in our community, look, we have homeless people in our community. And, you know, we have an officer, Marla Ferry, does an outstanding job. She actually works on a county task force. I think she holds a board membership there. And she does a fantastic job, her and her group, of, you know, trying to get services to the homeless. The real problem we have with the homeless is, you know, a lot of them are suffering from some sort of mental illness. And, you know, it makes it difficult for them, because we can't force somebody to get services. And I will say that, you know, not every one of the contacts we have with the homeless, we're able to get them placed, you know, in some place. And obviously our goal is to get them out of homelessness, you know, get them to some place where they can get the services they need, get the help that they desperately need, and you know, make a real change in their life. And we've had some success stories, and we've really had some good ones. A lot of veteran services. If we find a homeless person that's a vet, you know, we obviously try and hook them up with veteran services. But there's a lot of different services out there. You know, taking care of their basic needs, you know, is obviously important. Nobody should be hungry. Nobody should be without shelter. So, you know, I think those things are important. And although we're seeing a rise in homeless, you know, people, I don't think that we've seen a lot of homeless families, which, you know, up until now, you know, it gives me hope. Hopefully we won't, and hopefully we'll get past this pandemic, and, you know, we'll get back on the right track, and, you know, everybody will. But I will tell you, there are a lot of folks that are one missed paycheck away from falling into homelessness. So I think it's something that we all have to keep an eye on. And, you know, thank God for the religious leaders in our community that help with that, because, you know, funding and trying to find, you know, help is difficult at times. And you guys have always been there for us. The other leaders in the community have been there. So, you know, we do appreciate that.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for the community. Okay, let's go to the perhaps most hot topic issue that's on everyone's minds. I'm sure, Chief, that you watched the video of George Floyd being, I think it's safe to say, being killed, being murdered. Just recently, they released some. I think the body cameras of the officers. So we'll start with you. Everyone's seen the video. Everyone's seen the tragic death of someone that didn't deserve to die. But I want to hear from your perspective. What are your thoughts on his death and the aftermath of what's been happening since then?
Okay. Well, look, the loss of life is, any life is horrible. And I think that we and every police agency should operate under that basic, you know, premise that the perseverance of life is so precious. You know, I watched the video like everybody else, and I think like everybody else, I was horrified by what I saw. And I know that there's new body camera video being released. Ironically, earlier today, I got a text message from my brother-in-law that said, "Hey, after you saw this new video being released, has it changed your mind on your stance?" Because early on, my stance was that I
I was
was
about to
shocked.
ask, what is your stance? Yeah.
Yeah, that I was shocked that that occurred, and I will tell you why. Look, you know, there are times where we're called to a scene, somebody may resist, we have to take them in custody. The use of force is never pretty. It's never, something that's joyful to watch. In this instance, what I saw was a man that was handcuffed, that was subdued. He was not resisting any further, and I saw a police officer kneel on his neck for 8 minutes, and during that time that person died. Now I will tell you that I don't care what the autopsy says. I think that anytime, look, we can't be the people who are torturing somebody. Our officers are trained. Once somebody's in custody, once they're cuffed, sit them in a rescue position, pull their knees up, get them sat so that they're on their butt and that they're up. Anytime you're laying down, especially on your chest, it's going to restrict your breathing. In George Floyd's case, I know the autopsy revealed that he had fentanyl in a lethal dose of fentanyl, and I think the official death was a heart attack. But again, I can't get past the fact that we have a police officer who's kneeling on his neck. I immediately wrote a letter to our city commission, and I said that I didn't like what I saw. More importantly, I didn't like that there were other police officers standing around not doing anything about that. And that troubles me. And that's where you look at things and you say, is that bad training? Is that bad intent? Is that a bad person? Is that a group of bad people? It could be one or all of those things, in there. So, we need to look at what it is. But from what you saw on the initial video, it's something that just, it can't be tolerated. And I was appalled by it. And more importantly, and I will tell you that
It's good to hear that coming from your mouth. And I think that the community is good to hear that you're able to say that. Go on.
well, yeah, and I will tell you this. I've been fortunate in my life. I grew up just outside of Pittsburgh. I have many, many friends on the Pittsburgh police force and surrounding areas up there. I've been fortunate enough to attend some, prestigious schools and some prestigious training, Perth and the FBI National Academy. I've made contacts with, police officers from all over the country. I have yet to talk to a police officer who didn't agree that they didn't like what they saw there, which brings up the question of, if we all agree, what are we fighting about? I don't think that there's anybody that saw what we saw in that video that at least from a law enforcement perspective, would say, you know what, I'm good with that. But to the total opposite, everybody I saw says, nah, that was wrong. So, that's my position on it. The new body camera it's coming out, the footage, the autopsy reports and everything like that. Look, that may give you the why. And we talk about this in my command staff a lot. It may make something understandable. Was he resisting at first? Maybe he was. Maybe that makes it understandable, but it doesn't make it acceptable. At the end of the day, you have a person that is handcuffed, he's restrained. You should not have had somebody kneeling on his neck for that long, in my opinion.
Well, your opinion means a lot. You're the police chief, and you've seen a lot of this. Okay, Rabbi Friedman, let's get a more spiritual perspective from your perspective, seeing that video and what's going on. What's your thoughts?
Well, there's no question that as the Torah tells us, as soon as God makes, as soon as Adam is created in Genesis, the Talmud asks the question, why was man created as one? And the Talmud responds that to teach us that every single individual is an entire world, and to teach us that life, everyone's life, is valuable, precious, and not only that, God made us in a way, as the Talmud continues and says, made us each different, because that is the beauty of humanity. The beauty of humanity is that God wanted different people, different races, different cultural backgrounds and personal experiences and talents and so on. And each one together is one mishpacha, to use the language of the Talmud. It's one large family of mankind. And anybody who, unfortunately, treats one life lesser than the other life, that's very sad, and that's where a lot of this comes from. So definitely from a Torah perspective, and I actually gave an entire class on this, but just to the point here of
the whole class, Rabbi.
Because nobody's going to want to hear the whole class. But and there's actually a very beautiful Talmud in Sanhedrin, which discusses this in great detail. But this is really the gist of it. That's why Adam and Eve, but they were created actually as one, and for that reason, to highlight the importance of every single individual. Now, I do want to, if that's okay, Rabbi Denberg, I want to, ask the chief, perhaps in a little bit, this is, of course, all sensitive issues, although thank God it's calmed down a little bit in this country. And we all, like the chief has said, we all definitely agree that a life over here was tragically taken away. We were both, Rabbi Demig and I, we were at which I think Rabbi Demig will mention in a moment, we were at the clergy meeting that the police department called, and we were very comforted to hear that the Coral Springs police, and the way I understand, it's actually the law in Florida that you're not allowed to use some of those tactics, which caused the tragic loss of life with George Floyd. But I want to ask, and I know it's a tough balance the other way around. What happened as a result was that, of course, there was a lot of anarchy and there was a lot of violence, which is never acceptable. And the Torah also says in Deuteronomy, Shoftim v'shotrim, you have to have judges and you have to have police that enforce the rule of law. Otherwise, you have chaos and you have anarchy. So how do you, as a police chief, walk that fine balance, which I don't think is such a fine balance, but just based on somewhat political realities that's going on now and sensitivities, how do you walk that fine balance where the police force and your men know that you are there for them? You would not give into pressure when it's coming from a place which is wrong, and you will protect the citizens no matter the pressure. You'll protect the citizens and you will back your police, which is highly important for the safety and security of all citizens in the city. That's my long question.
Good question. Go for it.
Fantastic question. I will tell you this, that credibility matters. And if I'm going to have credibility, when I get up and I say, look, my officer handled him or herself perfectly. They did what they were trained to do. This is what they were taught. If I'm going to have credibility there, then when they do something that is over the line, I have to be honest and I have to call it out. And so transparency, and credibility are important. I will tell you that, first of all, the men and women that make up my department are fantastic. I said this earlier today that, it's easy to be a coach of a winning team. And, I'm fortunate to have the people that work for us. They're all fabulous people. I truly do. When my time comes to leave and move on to another chapter in my life, the big thing that I will miss is the professional, very good men and women that it's been my pleasure to work with, for, and around. So it is important. Of course,
we're not, Chief. We're not letting you go so fast.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, and I don't want to start a rumor. I have no plans on moving. But,
Yeah,
but
rumors start very quickly on Facebook. You should be real careful.
but I have been around a while, and so we'll see where that goes. But I will tell you that look, it's a very difficult job, and when we talk about the Citizens Police Academy, I urge everybody that can enroll in that. I wish we could run 12 of them a year, because it does give you a different perspective of just how difficult those split-second decisions are. Um, I think it's important that as a chief of police, as a command staff, that our officers know that we have their back. It's important for them to know the rules. It's important for them to know the lines and the boundaries, and they do, and they're all good. Are we perfect? No, nobody is. Have we made mistakes? Of course we have. But when somebody makes a mistake, you have to recognize it, you have to deal with it, you have to move on from it. But I will tell you that restraint has been, it's difficult. We've been blessed. We had I think eight protests in our city, all of them peaceful. But I look across the country and I see what's going on, and I see, especially in an era of COVID-19, I've seen some police officers who are standing a line and they have a protective shield over their face. And I saw one video clip that showed a young lady coming up, and she was smoking a cigarette, and she'd take a drag of her cigarette and she's blowing the smoke up under the face mask of the police officer. With COVID-19, not knowing who's sick, who isn't, asymptomatic, not or not, that's dangerous. And to have the restraint to not react to that, I give that particular police officer all the credit in the world. It's a difficult thing to do. You have to train to do it. I would tell you that we have one of the finest trained police departments. I'm so proud of our police training unit. It's small but mighty, and they do a fabulous job.
Yeah, I will agree with you that Coral Springs are really very well trained. We saw that on display in Stoneman Douglas. Comparing, we saw how good training comes into use. I'm going to follow up directly on what you just said on Rabbi Friedman's question. So, what is the morale like amongst the police here in Coral Springs? Because obviously, there's a lot of stories going around in the media about police not showing up to work and people retiring. What's our police morale like?
Well, I think we're doing okay. We're doing fine. I think obviously we have some people that are out sick. As far as retirements, no more than we normally would have. The normal retirement rate. We haven't experienced that. I think morale is pretty high, but morale being high, there's a lot of aspects of that. We have a fabulous community, and we get a lot of community support. And I put out, somebody, Oren Snyder, made him a flag, a thin blue line,
beautiful flag
for us. And he came and presented it to us. It's hanging in my conference room right now. We've had many instances of gifts from the community where people just come in, letters of appreciation. I get emails daily saying, I see this to fund the police movement. I'm so glad that we have a police department. I thank you for what you do. And, we've really got a good citizenry. And that really makes a difference, in our community. Having said that, it is difficult. Look, we're all bombarded daily with negative news. And the one thing that you want to make somebody mad who's not a racist, call them a racist. And I look at the George Floyd incident, and right away the Minneapolis mayor came out and said, being black in America should not be a death sentence. Man, that's a powerful political statement. But is it a true political statement? I don't believe it is. I think when I look at the facts and the data, it doesn't say that. In fact, I would say that when I look at the George Floyd incident, I haven't seen any data that says that was a racially motivated incident. It may have been. I don't know that. I don't know what was in the heart of the police officer. I don't know what was in there. I do know that it was horrific tactics, that I was disgusted by what I saw. and that somebody lost their life who probably did not need to lose their life. So of course I'm appalled by that. But immediately after that incident, across the country, and we're approximately 1,500 miles away from there, every police officer in America was labeled a racist. And that is something that wears on police officers, wears on police officers' family, wears on the citizens. You know, it's hard to be labeled something that you fight so hard against. I take that personally. It's a personal, insult to me to say that. So, I know that it's hard, but you have to put things in perspective. Look, we all know that news media has changed very rapidly since the advent of cell phones and social media and instant news. I saw a moving clip by Denzel Washington that I thought was meaning. I remember he was being interviewed and he said, if you don't read the paper, you're not informed. If you do read the paper, you're misinformed. And I think that is, something that, you sit back and makes you scratch your head. And he said, news media today is so in such a hurry to be first that it doesn't matter if they're right. And I think a lot
You
of
said that very carefully.
yeah, I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. Misinformation, leads to fear. Fear leads to anger. So, I think as a nation, we need to do a better job of reporting facts and getting the facts out there.
Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you, Rabbi Friedman. So the chief just referenced a flag hanging in his conference room from Oren Snyder. You want to briefly give the backstory to that flag?
Well, yes, absolutely. That was a very a nice experience. We have a member of our community, as you just said, Oren Snyder, and he's a very special young individual. He loves this country, and he loves the city. He, I think, was born in Coral Springs, actually, and he felt that the police were wrongfully they were under attack. They were, as the chief just said, being labeled things that they're not. His experience, or mislabeled, and he said, "I want to just do my little show of support." And he is an excellent. He's great with making woodwork. In fact, he just made a little table for my home, a little wooden table, also with an American flag. So and it's beautiful. So he asked me, his mom asked, and so on. I would love to give this as a gift to the police. This is my way, using my talent to show that I respect, honor, and recognize the tremendous sacrifice and the fact that the police put their life on the line every single day. And it was beautiful. We got together with Chief Parry. We got together with both deputy chiefs, and it was a beautiful experience.
That's great. So you also mentioned the protests that happened here in Coral Springs. There was 8 protests, you said, that happened. So Rabbi Friedman and I were both together with all the local clergy. There was a meeting that the police had with the clergy before the first protest was scheduled to happen. I believe it was on a Friday, if I remember correctly. I was very impressed. I'm sure, Rabbi Friedman, I don't know your thoughts. We were there together, but the interaction and the engagement between the police and the community, and there were many black pastors in the room and African, the whole community together was a great, very, very, very productive meeting, I felt. That's amazing, the way there's this engagement interaction. Do you think that there's a difference between the Coral Springs Police Department that's engaged in the community versus perhaps larger New York Police Department or Seattle and the larger cities?
Well,
Even the sheriff's office, if I want to get a little bit more direct and close to home?
Yeah, obviously the bigger your area, the more challenges that presents. But look, I think you got to look at things, everybody wants the same thing. We all want the same thing. It don't matter what ethnicity you are, what race you are. We all want the same thing. We want to live in peace. We want to prosper. We want to see our children do good. So if you just look at basic human rights and that's your baseline, you can go from there. And it's not always us against them. And I think that is the key. And we drive that point home. And, it's amazing, because most of the protests we had, we were fortunate enough to meet with the organizers. We were able to talk to them. I think they came away better people and we came away better people. And I think it stresses the importance of sitting down and talking, because when they stop seeing you as a symbol, whether it's a symbol of law enforcement, and start seeing you as a person, that's when true understanding comes. And when you share, like experiences look, police officers aren't any different than anybody else. We have our problems, we have our marital problems, we have, work problems, personal problems, all of those things like every other, person in the world. And I think that if we just, get together on a same level and start treating each other as human beings, that works. I think, you look at the bigger departments, they're broken down into zones and sectors and in smaller cities. And I think they just need to do a good job of engaging their community and really bringing that through. One of the things that we talk about is a lot of times the why matters. Why are you doing this? Good evening, sir. The reason I pulled you over today is that I noticed you rolled through a red light. Telling them why matters. If you don't give them the why, their brain will think, a million different reasons. I always say that if you leave a blank, it's human nature for humans to put the most, the chief wants me to do this because blank. And if I don't tell them what the blank is, if I don't tell them the why, it's human nature for them to come up with all kinds of reasons for the why. So communication, getting down and talking to people and treating everybody like you'd like to be treated, I think is the key to any true community outreach and any true understanding that you develop in relationships in your community.
If you're a smart man,
Chief, I want to say, Rabbi Denberg, that I could attest to the fact that the police are actually human beings, because we've been fortunate to have almost every Shabbat we've had police officers. And is it Officer Timothy, who was the first of the Coral Springs police officers who ran onto the MSD property during the shooting? It's Officer Timothy, I believe, right?
Officer Tim Burton.
Tim Burton, and we love Tim Burton. And the reason why I'm saying he's so human is because he loves the gefilte fish at the Kiddush. Gefilte fish is a very traditional Jewish food. So we love providing him with the gefilte fish, and he loves having the gefilte fish. So we love having him whenever he comes here.
It's very good you're saying about the human side, because I'm thinking as we're talking about that meeting that Rabbi Friedman and I were at together with all the clergy. It was such a diverse group, and so Rabbi Friedman at the meeting brought up the Jewish, the worries of anti-Semitism that was happening together with the protests that was a little bit dangerous for the Jewish community. But it was, for me, eye-opening to see other communities and how they have a whole different perspective, and the way that, I don't think we did, but Deputy Sean Backer did an excellent job. I don't know if he's watching, but you could tell him that he did an excellent job running the meeting. And it was very good to see the level of engagement and interaction and very healthy dialogue. And I think it was great.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that actually what was one of the things that stood out in the meeting is the openness of those. It was both, Sean and Brad who were leading the meeting, and there was total openness for whether critique
2 hours,
and issues that they brought up, and there was just a very, very positive interaction.
If I could, this is a great opportunity, great time for me to say, I was out of town at that time. I had to leave. I had a death in my family. But I will tell you this: that there is never a time that I leave that I ever worry about the police department or our citizens, because I have a fantastic command staff, and Sean and Brad and all the other guys in my command staff. do a fabulous job, and they truly are. They make it easy to be me, and I do appreciate them. They are terrific people, and I'm glad that you guys had the chance to interact with them and see just the quality human being, the quality person that the entire command staff is.
And by the way, Chief, I want to, if I may, because of all this, the food distribution. So we've had here, Sergeant Fernandez, who has done a wonderful job. And, I want to give a shout out here that he gets a congratulations soon. I know he told us he's supposed to be having his first daughter in a week or two. So he doesn't know if he'll continue, but I'm suggesting that he bring his daughter and let her help out over here.
There you go.
Train them young. That's the way to do it.
But he's been great. He's been great. So, hats off to him as well. And the other officers who have been here helping him out.
Thank you.
Okay, time is flying. We're having fun. I want to talk about another very big political, hot topic button that's important to discuss, which is there's a lot of calls to defund the police. And since we're giving shout outs to all the amazing police officers, from a personal level, I know that every time that I've reached out to either Officer Glenn Roberts, who's like the community liaison about our security needs in our synagogue, I've gotten he's come several times on security assessments of our facility to help us get grants, to help us plan. Officer Carla Kimotek, who did training for we have a whole a group of volunteers, a security group, come do training for us and dealing with the active shooter training and all that. You just have to call the police department, get the right person, and there's no charge, there's nothing, and you guys are amazing. So tell us in practical English language that we could understand. If we were to, thankfully, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen here in Coral Springs. I mean, there's a lot of support for the police. But if, let's just say, the police budget was slashed by 20%, what would that mean practically? Well, I got a very important note that she's actually, you told me before, Carla Kimotek is married. It's mazel tov to her. She's not Carla Miller. We wish her a lot of blessings in her marriage and a lot of healthy, happy years together. Thanks to the hat tip from a good friend of mine, Natalie Goodman of Chama Goodman is watching. Yeah, so tell us what that would mean for us in practical terms.
Okay, well, you hit it the right time because we just, obviously COVID-19 is affecting everybody's businesses, including the police department. Our tax base is definitely going to be, affected by it. So, we were just asked, it's budget time, and we were asked to do 3 different scenarios. One was a scenario where we came in at last year's budget, which was a fairly simple exercise. The other is a 2% reduction. The other was a 5% reduction. I'll jump to the 5% reduction. The 5% reduction would have demanded that we lay off 24 officers. Cut 24 positions. And I'll tell you how we get there. 88% of my budget is in personnel, either salary and benefits, they pay for, the personnel. So 88% of that is in that. That leaves 12% of the budget left for everyday expenses. When I say everyday expenses, we, like every other person, have to pay an electric bill. We have to pay, for, repairs, maintenance, water bill, all of those things that everybody has to pay, we have to pay. Uniforms, equipment, our gun belts, our vehicles, our cars, so it doesn't leave a lot of money there. Years ago, we had a city manager, and, he came up with this motto of do more with less. And by doing more with less, he said, I'm going to make sure that you guys are one of the top paid agencies. We're going to give you good equipment, but I'm going to ask that you do more with less. I know that in our contract negotiations, the FOP presented a document that, compared us to the surrounding cities around us. Some cities on the low end, we're probably, per population police officer per every 1,000. We're down anywhere from 24 officers all the way up to 40 officers compared to the surrounding agencies. Now, that's that's good, that we're able to provide a high level of police services, you know, for, with less people, but when 88% of our budget is tied up in personnel, any kind of budget reduction is definitely cut services. When you look at it practically, okay, if I'm, asked to cut money, when I said I had to do a 2% reduction scenario, one of the first things that we cut are community involvement and training. Those are two areas right now that I would say we need more funding in as a nation, as police officers across the nation. We're obviously not, making inroads like we should into our communities. And we talked about bigger cities and, and that. And then the training, again, I can't imagine a training scenario, and I'll give you this. There was a big push to ban chokeholds. And, Commissioner Simmons was hosting some meetings, and he said, Chief, what can you tell me about chokeholds? And I said, we don't do them. That's what I can tell you about them. We don't do them. And in fact, 10 years ago, the Broward County Chiefs of Police Association sent a letter to our academy and said, we don't want you to teach that. So, something that may be a standard or still on the books in other police departments across the nation, Broward County, hasn't been doing for over 10 years. And so if we're not doing those things for 10 years, and our training has taught us that, and now all of a sudden, the big movement to defund the police, there's, again, we talked about misconception, misinformation. If you were to listen, I just had a couple items that were getting approved at one of our commission meetings. I had 21, I think, speakers signed up, some pro, some against, and the items weren't very controversial, but the misconception out there is, oh my God, they're military items. You're militarizing the police department. Wasn't really what it is, but the misconceptions out there, that story has been out there. The news media has run wild with that story. And you would think that that you come to my office, and when you come up to my office, I open up a cabinet, and inside are bricks of gold that I keep in there, and I use those bricks of gold to buy tanks and all kinds of military gear, and it's simply not the case. So I think when false information grows legs and spreads, and we all know how fast rumors and misinformation can spread. I think it leads to misunderstanding. If we have done a bad job as a profession, the police profession, we haven't countered those negative stories well enough. Some of it's our fault. Some of it is, we do a lot of good things in the community. We can't force news agencies to report on them. If something else comes up, it goes to the back. As you're aware, we just launched the alert system. And when I say just launched it, last year we did a filming for Good Morning America. It was slated to go before school ended last year. They just released the news story that they did on Good Morning America 3. And, of course, the alert system is a system that, is used in Chabad as well as the Coral Springs Charter School. And I think it makes, that school the safest school in the nation. Very proud of the work that went into that, and very proud of all the people that had a hand in that. But getting that information out has been difficult. Getting positive news stories about the police, especially today, is very difficult. But you get a bad rumor.
That's why we're having this interview now, so we can get a chance to hear the good stuff.
And I appreciate that.
By the way, one of the challenges, rabbis have the same challenge as well to some extent, that many of the good things we do are private by nature. Not only that we can't get the media to cover it, even if we could, we don't go onto Facebook. We're dealing with people's lives and personal, confidential situations that sometimes take a lot of effort that nobody else, and even in our own close circle of community members, are unaware of. So yes. I really want to give a chance to hear a story from each of you, because he's talking about getting the story out there. And I want to hear a story from both of you. personal stories. Don't go away with those that are watching. Before that, one last question, which is there's a lot going on. People are worried about a lot of things, whether it's protests and perhaps even thank God we haven't seen here any violence. You know, God forbid, there could be rising crime rates as people get more desperate. Hurricanes could be coming. You know, all the lot that the people are worried about. So I'm going to ask both of you. We'll start with, I guess, Rabbi Friedman. We'll start with you, then the chief. If you have a message that you could share with the concerned citizens of our community about what's going on, how they should be reacting or preparing for these things.
You know, that's a loaded question, but I would say a couple of things. Number one, regarding the safety and security of the city, I think the history and the record of this police department has been fantastic, and everybody's human beings and everybody has room for improvement, but they've been fantastic. And therefore, I want to say that the whole question of defunding the police is such a ridiculous question. If we just go back 6 months ago, you'd be laughed out of town. Of course, there could be a police department that needs if it's rotten to the core or rotten by its leadership, then it is the responsibility of the elected officials to perhaps dismantle and start from the bottom up. But as a general statement, that is such a ridiculous statement and question and so on. Unfortunately, you cannot have a society without police. It's just a reality. And if you have a good police force, like we have in Coral Springs, every single dollar spent for the police department is not only well deserved, but it's a dollar well spent, because that brings stability, security, and harmony within a society. And so, therefore, to ask you a question about the concern about the future in terms of this city, from a spiritual perspective, it's all in God's hands. We know that. Just like this virus and all these incidences came without, just came out of nowhere. No one expected it to come. So how much more so there's a statement in the Talmud and repeated by many of our sages, Meruba Mida Toiva, that the good is always greater and more powerful than the bad, because ultimately God is good. So if all of a sudden this negativity came out of nowhere, just as quick and even quicker, positive results and news and health and good health, the COVID, tomorrow, all of a sudden from an unexpected source, a remedy, a vaccine, etc. In terms of again, safety and security, we have a fantastic police force. We have fantastic spiritual leadership in this city. We have fantastic volunteers, as mentioned before. I mean, we had 60 volunteers of all backgrounds helping distribute food to people they don't know, of all backgrounds. These are such positive development. And I want to say the volunteers that are coming over here are excited to do it, because they just believe in humanity, they love humanity, and they're just excited to do it. So these things to me is hopeful beyond, and let's stop looking just with the clouded glasses. Things are good, they'll get better, and we have good leadership and we have good people in this city.
Rabbi, I love your message. I love it. That's the message we need to be saying. It's going to be good. Okay, Chief, let's hear from your perspective. Any parting word before we get to the story? We're going to end up with the story, but any parting message you would share with people that are watching tonight?
Well, first, I'd like everybody to judge everybody by the content of their character. I think that's a fantastic goal. Treat everybody as you'd like to be treated. Look, I swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. If people want to come out and protest, I welcome it. Even protests that I disagree with. I'm prepared to lay down my life to protect that right. So I do believe in free speech. I do believe in the right to assemble, peacefully assemble, as written in our Constitution by our founding fathers. I truly believe in that. I believe in the American way. Look, change and meaningful change doesn't happen sometimes, all alone, all by itself. So, we need to come out and do that. I don't want George Floyd's death, to be in vain. So if there are changes that we can make, we've looked at them and we've made some changes. So I'm all for that. As far as the safety of everybody, I would say, look, don't take the law into your own hands. If you see something that looks out of sort, give us a call. That's what we're here for. We live to do that. I always tell people, burglaries have always been a big problem in the city of Coral Springs. And I say, it's never more frustrating than when you get that call and the neighbor says, like I saw something that I didn't think was right, but you guys are too busy. I didn't want to waste your time. I would much rather have you call us and waste our time. If it turns out to be nothing, I'd rather check it out, and so would my officers, because we're going to write the report anyway. It's a heck of a lot easier to write the report when you have the bad guy in the back of your police car. So, call us if you need us. Pay attention to the messaging we're putting out. You mentioned hurricanes. Please, everybody, now's the time to prepare for those things. We have a fantastic EM director in Alex Falcone. And, so pay attention to the messaging, do the things that you need to do to secure your family, and leave the policing to us.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so it's already been an hour and it flew by quickly. But as you said before, that it's important to share the story, especially the human stories behind the badge, and to recognize both the trials and also the triumphs of the job. So if you can share with us, Chief, we'll start with you. One from your 31-year career as an officer, one incident that stands out in your mind, either something funny or something that was very meaningful, where you were able to see that you made an impact in somebody's life.
I've coached football with the Coral Springs Chargers for a number of years, probably 30 all told, and I'd like to think I've made a difference in a lot of young men's lives, and some women. I've had some female players over the years, and that's been good. But I will tell you that there was one thing recently that happened when I was a deputy chief. I was sitting in on an interview, and we were interviewing a young man for a police officer job, and he came in and he didn't really do well with the interview. And I could tell he was nervous. His mouth was so dry. I mean, I was surprised that he could even get his mouth open. It was so dry, and he just didn't do a good job at the interview. But I liked his message. I saw something in him. And, typically if somebody doesn't do well with the interview, our HR director we'll call them and let them know that, we're passing on you. We have better qualified candidates. And it's very difficult to get hired by us. But in that instance there, and this happened to be an African-American man. And, I had said to our HR lady, I said, could you please give me his number? I'd like to call him. And when I did, I said, look, I got bad news for you. I said, we're going to pass on you, and I said, not that you answered anything bad, or incorrectly, it's just that you weren't polished. Your answers were not really, precise and everything. I said, if you're willing, I would like to spend some time coaching you and helping you with your interview skills and helping you. And he's like, would you really do that for me? And I'm like, of course I would. You have to do your part. And I met with him for over the course of 6 months, and we went over, interview techniques. We went over, some basic report writing, some things that you need to do. And I got to tell you that right now he's a police officer in Delray Beach, and doing a fabulous job. And probably one of the pleasures of my life is, he invited me up to see him sworn in. And, I'm in the audience, very proud that, it's a big day for this young man. He grew up in an area that he really had to work to stay out of trouble. He did all the right stuff. And now he's being sworn in as a police officer. And one of the things, the traditions we have at the police department is the pinning of the badge. And, I didn't know this at the time, but I was sitting in the audience and they asked him, who do you want to pin your badge? and he asked me to come up and pin his badge. And,
Oh.
of course, I've made fun of a lot of people trying to pin a badge on, through a uniform, very difficult thing to do. And I ended up there and I struggled pinning that badge on him, but I was so honored to do it. And, I actually honored and guilty at the same time because the young man's parents were in the audience. And, afterwards I got with them and, and they're thanking me. And I said, listen, you are the ones that need to be thanked. You raise good children. And that is the key to our society. Raise good children. If we all raise good children, we'll be a better, stronger society. And they raised a good kid, and now he's a young man, and he's proudly wearing a badge for Delray Beach. And I'm very proud of him. So,
Chief, that's a beautiful story. And what I loved most about the story was the pride and what we call in Yiddish, the nachas on your face. As you were sharing that story, I could see the glow on your face, and that shows the quality of your character as well, and that's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, Rabbi Friedman, so when you ask a Chabad rabbi for a story, usually there's like 5 stories, but if you could just choose one of them, I'm sure the many that you have of being a police chaplain, please.
Well, I'll tell you what, because it's kind of late and it's past the hour, there is a story in terms of a rabbi and the police, but it's a longer story and it's kind of late. So I will just end off with maybe a little bit of a cuter story because it's a little bit in line with what the police chief just shared, talking about a little nachas, a little self pleasure. We had a secretary. I don't know if this wasn't mentioned, but I also take pride in being Rabbi Yankee's uncle. So I'm not
That's
sure,
right.
I'm not sure how many years ago this was. You might remember we had a secretary at Chabad. She was, I believe, from South America, and she was an excellent secretary. And one day I was very disappointed. And the reason why I was disappointed is she notified me that she's leaving from being a secretary and she wants to become a police officer. And that was the last thing I expected. My secretary, all of a sudden, she's secretary, she's doing such a dedicated job, and she wants to be a police officer. And she actually went through she left and she was diligent. And I had great pride. She invited me to her graduation. And over there, I was there at her graduation with great nachas, as Rabbi Yankee says, for her graduation. Still there?
You're still there, yes.
We'll end for that cute story. And on my part, thank you very, very much, Rabbi Denmark, for hosting this interview. Thank you very much, Chief. And, in this trying times, we all need God's blessing to always make the right decisions and make sure that the decisions that we make are well accepted by our constituents, the citizens. So may you be blessed to continue to be able to lead with wisdom and with righteousness, etc.
Thank you. Yes, let's end that. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Rabbi Friedman, for everything you're doing for the community, the food, and everything you're doing for the police force. And a very special thank you to Chief Parry, to you, and to an amazing, amazing police force that you're leading. As we mentioned a few of the officers before, every one of them is doing an amazing job on the ground for our community. I mentioned Officer Roberts and Officer Carla Miller and Officer Chad Whittington and all those that are helping us with our security and ensuring that our houses of worship are safe. And every one of the officers on the ground.
I will also, Rabbi Denmark, I also would mention Captain Sorbonne, who's been very...
yes, Sorbonne has helped us too. I remember, yes, he's also in our synagogue, that's correct. And all the officers on the ground, the ones that are, on the pavement and out there every day risking their lives and keeping us safe. Each and every one of them really deserves by name a thank you, but we don't know all the names, there's no time. But thank you for keeping them going. And I think I speak on behalf of the entire community on thanking you and all the officers for everything that you're doing to keep us safe and protected. And God shall bless you and protect you in everything that you do, in your comings and your goings, for a lot of health and prosperity and only blessings. Thank you very much.
I want Rabbi Denver, just quickly before we go off the air, I do want to mention, I know you mentioned her name, but I think she deserves recognition because she's sort of been the liaison for both your community, Rabbi Denberg, and as well as our community. Natalie Gutman, who's been the liaison to the police department, and she's done a fantastic job in bringing more security to our communities.
I will strongly agree with you. She has been definitely liaison and helped both of us make sure that we're connected to the police and bringing the police together, bringing the food over. And yes, she's a perfect example of how a regular community member can actually have a tremendous impact when they just decide that they care. You don't have to be a rabbi or an officer to be able to truly have an impact in the community. So that's a very important thank you, yes. Okay, thank you very much, and God should do a lot of blessings.
Thank you, gentlemen. I couldn't agree more about Natalie also, so thank you.
Yes, we all agree. Okay, that's great. Thank you, and stay tuned for many more wonderful activities from Chabad, from the police, and we'll be in touch, God willing. As we say in Hebrew, Laila Tov, good night.